Hello Internet, Seth Skorkowski coming back at you with another tabletop war story. Now this is something that we refer to as the Thor incident, or as one player puts it, that f***ing shield. And like with many good tabletop war stories, this isn't a story about a player character kicking ass and making flawless rolls. No, this is a story about failure. Spectacular, legendary, campaign-changing failure. Many years ago, we were playing some 1st edition D&D, and one of my players had a barbarian named Korgoth. Yes, Korgoth, just like Korgoth of Barbaria, but this was shortly before that pilot aired, so my player had it first. As a side note, if you have not seen the pilot for Korgoth of Barbaria, it is available on YouTube. Do yourself a favor and check that out, links below. Now one thing with barbarians is that they hate magic and they destroy magic items. Now the PCs were lower level at the time and they had just completed a smaller little dungeon. They had gotten a ton of loot from it, including several magic items, and they had split those up, and among them Korgoth received a +1 shield that he planned to sacrifice in Thor's name. The session itself started out normal enough. You spend the night sleeping outside the village, and as the sun rises, you see the guards opening the gate. Let's go in and resupply for our next adventure, and spend all of our loot. You guys go on without me. Korgoth has a few things he needs to do first. Okay, once they leave, Korgoth is going to build a campfire up, like really big, and after a prayer to Thor, he's going to throw the shield on it. Now, using the old saving throw matrix from 1st edition, a non-magical fire only could destroy that shield on a 1 in 20, and that's before we take into account any of the magical bonuses that shield had. The player failed so badly that the shield actually came out in better condition than it went in, as if the flames had somehow cleaned up any scuffs or anything like that. So while it was still hot from the fire, he tried pounding on it with various weapons, but none of them did any good at all. Okay, you said there were some cliffs nearby. Could I find like a long vertical crack? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wedge that shield into the crack, and then with the leverage, I'm going to bend the shield. Korgoth's bend bars lift gates was about 30%, but because this had already gone long enough, this is only supposed to have taken us a couple minutes, and he was using an entire mountain as a point of leverage, I went ahead and gave him a 50% chance of breaking the shield. Part of the cliff breaks off and rocks come tumbling down. Make a dex check to keep from taking damage. Now the rest of the players were all laughing at this, but the player that was making these bad rolls was getting a bit frustrated, and Korgoth was getting pissed at this stupid shield. Okay, Korgoth is going to walk into that village and go straight to the blacksmith shop. And I'm going to ask him to make me some sort of tool or something that I can use to break that shield. The blacksmith says no, he doesn't want to destroy such a beautiful shield. Oh, I'm going to pay him. How much? Everything. Dude, we just made a fortune. You have like 1,000 gold. And I'm going to spend all of it. Well, in that case, the blacksmith definitely agrees to do it. Now the shield breaker that Korgoth designed was 3 parts. The first part was a plate, kind of like an anvil, but had a big hole in the top of it. The second part was a giant iron spike, and the third part was a giant hammer. So the idea was that he was going to lay down this anvil plate, put the shield on top of it, put the spike on top of the shield, and then with that giant hammer he was going to slam the spike through the shield, effectively destroying it. Now Korgoth is going to be paying a small fortune for this thing, so I want it to be nice. It's going to be all engraved with Nordic designs and runes that detail Thor's legendary deeds. Well, the blacksmith doesn't speak Norse and he can't read runes, and also, does Korgoth even know how to read? No, he can't read. So, what he's going to do is he's going to put on the hammer what he thinks are runes, kind of what he thinks is all about Thor's legendary deeds. So it'll be covered in gibberish that looks a lot like runes. Haha, pretty much. At this point, the other player characters had already resupplied and they'd gotten their hook to go on their next adventure, and I was a bit eager to go ahead and go on with that and get back to them. So I had the smith tell Korgoth that it was going to take him 10 days to complete the work and he should come back then. No way, Korgoth is not leaving. He's going to stay with him until it is done. And the whole time, he's going to be telling the blacksmith all the stories of Thor's power and might, and how this offering is going to appease him. Now at this point, what was supposed to have been a short little task of role-playing that was only going to take a minute or two had dominated the last hour of our gaming session, and it began to feel like I was neglecting the other players, but when I asked them, they were all, "Nah brother, I am good. This is entertaining as hell." Yeah, I want to see what happens. So Korgoth spends the next 10 days in the smithy, regaling the smith of all these stories about Thor and his bravery and all his accomplishments as the smith is crafting this beautiful weapon breaker for him. But finally the night arrived. I asked the player to go ahead and roll percentile dice, but I didn't tell him why. And the reason that I asked for this percentile dice roll is I figured with all the money and the time, both time in and out of character, that Korgoth was spending on this thing, that there was going to be a small chance, like a 2 or a 4% chance that Thor would actually notice this sacrifice, and he would reward Korgoth with some sort of blessing or boon or something like that for all his dedication. And this was the first successful roll that that player made in the entire session. Now, of course, I never told the player why he was making that roll. That would ruin the surprise, and I like to keep him paranoid. Okay, the night has come. The smith puts the shield into the forge and tells you to operate one of the 2 bellows ropes. That way you can get it good and hot. Mike, where are you?
Yeah, I'm probably in the bar drinking and gambling.
And Dweebles? My monk is probably away from everybody meditating. All right, there is a large flat rock on the far side of the mill pond. That way you're kind of looking out across the water to the village. Meanwhile, Korgoth, you and the blacksmith are pumping these 2 bellows ropes back and forth, getting the flames hotter and hotter. Okay, but as he's going, Korgoth is going to start screaming, "For Thor! For Thor! For Thor!" Well, the blacksmith, who's been listening to you talk about Thor all week, he starts getting caught up in the moment of all of this, so he starts yelling back at you, "For Thor! For Thor! For Thor!" Okay, Mike, everyone in the tavern starts hearing this screaming coming from outside, and a few of the people go outside in order to investigate it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with them.
You figure out that it's coming from the smithy, and everybody starts gathering around the building, trying to figure out what all this screaming is about. Meanwhile, across the pond, you see these distant clouds come rolling in, and they're crackling purple with lightning. And across the water from the village, you can hear this distant shouting, "For Thor! For Thor! For Thor!" And somewhere up in the clouds, whenever that lightning crackles, you see what look like the silhouettes of flying women, and there's some sort of sound of distant music. Korgoth and the smith, they pull this glowing red shield off the fire and onto the weapon breaker. And he's still screaming, "For Thor! For Thor! For Thor!" as he takes that spike and he sets it down on top of that red hot shield. And you grab the hammer and roll. Just don't fumble. He didn't fumble. And as Korgoth smashed that shield, this bolt of lightning shot down from the heavens and completely destroyed the blacksmith shop. It just exploded. And everybody that was gathered around the blacksmith shop, they got knocked over from the blast. And as the smoke cleared, Korgoth was standing in the middle of the smoking ruin before them. Then he holds up his hammer and he screams, "For Thor!" And this is the story of how, with a few bad dice rolls, Korgoth the Barbarian converted an entire town into worshipping Thor. I asked the player if he might want to convert to cleric after this because everybody was referring him to as a priest already. But he was like, "Nah, I don't want to be a cleric. I like being a barbarian." So the blacksmith ended up becoming the high priest of this new cult of Thor. And all the worshippers in town, they would come to the smith shop, which became the new temple. And how they worshipped Thor is they would throw an item into the forge, which is their most sacred place, and they would scream, "For Thor!" Eventually the campaign moved on, and the player characters ended up leaving this crappy little village behind, but Korgoth always carried that shield breaker with him whenever he went, but he never used it in combat. He only used it to destroy magical items. But like with many great player characters, Korgoth eventually died. And when he entered the halls of Valhalla and he stood before his god, he recognized the shield on Thor's back. A crappy +1 shield that Thor loved more than any shield he had ever had. Now, after the 4 Thor incident, the heroes did have a regular adventure for the second half of that session, and during it, the player characters all fought very bravely, I assume. Truthfully, none of us even remember what the adventure was after the 4 Thor incident. This was definitely one of those cases where the most memorable part of the game wasn't the part that was planned out beforehand, but ended up being the part that was improvised just due to bad dice rolls and good role-playing.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed our little stroll down memory lane, just hit that thumbs up down there, or maybe even share it. If you want to see some more of our tabletop war stories or other videos like that, just hit that subscribe button. Till next time, compadres, y'all have a great day.